There's a lot of different components that we can invite into it, but for this particular series, it's more focused on getting off of the chair, right? Instead of being that armchair commentator guy of like, oh, this game sucks. You know, I don't know why the devs didn't do this, or what was the point, or what was the choice behind that, and, you know, I don't get why no one else is making something like this. We're gonna try to at least be one of the people who can contribute to that, right? Let's make something like the X thing that we haven't been seeing. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's a dig on any game that's out there, but I always, maybe it's a pride thing, but I always like to be equipped with having some sort of viable answer for the thing that it is that I'm complaining about, rather than just kind of screaming into the abyss and hoping something changes. Let's start simple. Let's figure out how to do a 2D game, I think, or let's learn 2D mechanics. Where I want to start for at least the initial. Should we talk about that now, chat? Should we talk about that later? Because I like 2D. Ultimately, I want to do 3D, but I'm curious there too for what you folks think out there. I guess for like a solo game dev, right? Are there many differences as far as difficulty and scaling would be concerned with building out a 2D like game compared to a 3D game, right? Where you have a new dimension that you're working with essentially, right? It's not just a flat surface that's up and down. I'm now dealing with many tertiary elements that are involved. In my opinion, I feel like 2D should be... So, let's think, chat. Because what I'm wanting to at least get at here, configuration wise, is if we're learning games, or if we're learning how to code, same way that a lot of these online courses break down web application development, they break it into steps. Those steps are different because those steps are like, hey, there's a couple of different languages you're invoking as part of this, right? So there's HTML, there's CSS, there's JavaScript for all the functionality. So there's 3 different bad guys you got to start taking down. In this one, hopefully it just kind of puts it through one coding language, but I think there's more of a conceptual, like, mechanics kind of element that we have to focus on. So if you're building a game, what makes sense in terms of movement? Just follow the cursor. Movement, main thing. I have to learn how to take an object from point A to point B. Traditional gaming stuff, right? You got to make it interactive. So that's the main, I would say that that's priority number 1. Because other than that, you want movement. You want to achieve an objective. So you want to learn, I guess, conditionals. If I were to look at it that way. Conditionals. Ugh. That's spelled right and fucking terribly. You want to learn movement, you want to learn conditionals. So if player or if object reaches that, success. I think that's not really it. But then you want to learn interactive, right? So you want to learn movement, you want to learn conditionals, interactability. Jesus. Let's see you try to do it better, chat. Interactability. Damn, this looks like... I could be wrong. But remember that, chat. Take a screenshot here. Movement, conditionals, interactability. Those are the 3 things that we likely need to learn to be dangerous with actually putting an idea and putting a solid concept together. Like... So it looks like there's defaults to the whole thing, right? And there's likely a repeating process as far as this is concerned. So here's our standing animation. Here's our breathing animation. It kind of looks like, right? Our character's standing, inhales, you see the gut. Or wait, when you inhale. What the fuck happens when you inhale? Oh, your belly gets bigger. Either way. So... your lungs expand, though, which you can kind of see from the shadow underneath. I don't want to hear that, chat. All right, we know biology. We've graduated some sort of schooling. All right. So there's a default standing, breathing, still breathing. It looks like this is just one loop here. You can kind of see some changes. Yeah, you see, standing, breathe in, breathe out, standing, breathe in, breathe out. So there's 4 here. Now, if you press forward So I need new basically images. Okay, so I see how they do it. They stack this, and there's largely, if you keep it in one PNG, you can probably just map these specific squares out. Since it's a PNG file anyways, the alpha's cut out in the back end. So now I'm just looking at, boom, yep. Stretch, boom, and then she kicks out. Second leg, goes back. And then here's a jump. She goes up, and then she lands. Okay, cool. On the back side of it, though, when we look at environment, what do we get here? See, I'm too silly to understand what this might mean. I'm assuming you stack and repeat these, or you kind of take this middle element, marry it with here, and you create tertiaries. So we'll learn about that. Everything is pretty much just driven off of images. Yeah. Okay. Curious what these are for. These like solid shapes with just one color associated to them. Yeah. With additional like sticks and branches and leaves and twigs and stuff like that. Sky? Alright, so likely just backdrop for everything. And then tiles for main. These are all your additional assets, right? So your images, your health pots, life bars, stuff like that. Okay. So this goes into the asset creation part of it, which we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's continue.
This should work out for most of you, but a few people might have some trouble with this and are unable to drop the files into Unreal Engine. In that case, you can try using the import button on the top left of the content drawer, which usually works around that issue. Now that we have all of our textures in Unreal Engine, let's have a look at the environmental assets. If you double click the T_tiles main texture and zoom in, you can tell that something is off and it looks very blurry. This is because the default settings for textures introduce texture filtering and other settings that don't work well with pixel art. To work around that though, we only have to right click the texture, go to Sprite Actions, and apply Paper 2D Texture Settings. This will update the settings to be ideal for pixel art, and you can see that when we zoom in.
Wait, why does it look blurry?
This should work out for most of you, but a few people might have some trouble with this and are unable to drop the files into Unreal Engine. In that case, you can try using the import button on the top left of the content drawer, which usually works around that issue. Now that we have all of our textures in Unreal Engine, let's have a look at the environmental assets. If you double click the T_tiles main texture and zoom in, you can tell that something is off and it looks very blurry. This is because the default settings for textures introduce texture filtering and other settings that don't work well with pixel art. To work around that though, we only have to right click the texture, go to Sprite Actions, and apply Paper 2D Texture Settings. This will update the settings to be ideal for pixel art, and you can see that when we zoom in. Select all of the other environmental textures as well by holding Shift and clicking all of them, and apply the Paper 2D Texture settings to them as well. To use these textures with a tile map, we first need to convert them to tile sets. Let's start with the one on the right, which is T_tiles main, and right click it. Go to Sprite Actions and create tile set.
Okay, what does this do?
Double click the newly created tile set to open it up. Here in the tileset editor, there are only a couple of things we have to do before we can use these tiles in the game. The first thing we need to figure out is the tile size. We can see here on the right side that it's set to 32 by 32 by default. However, if we click around on the left side, you can see that the size of the square doesn't really match the tiles themselves. Sometimes the asset creator will mention the tile size, but other times you'll just have to use some trial and error to figure it out by yourself. For this asset, I know that the correct size is 16 by 16, so we can just type that in. Now that we have the correct tile size, the only thing left to do here is assigning the collision to the tiles that need it. Let's start from the top left side. You can see that
Creating the tile sets. Okay, so why are we doing this?
Double click the newly created tile set to open it up. Here in the tileset editor, there are only a couple of things we have to do before we can use these tiles in the game. The first thing we need to figure out is the tile size. We can see here on the right side that it's set to 32 by 32 by default. However, if we click around on the left side, you can see that the size of the square doesn't really match the tiles themselves. Sometimes the asset creator will mention the tile size, but other times you'll just have to use some trial and error to figure it out by yourself. For this asset, I know that the correct size is 16 by 16, so we can just type that in.
Okay, hold on, as I play with it. Ah, I see. Whoa, that's cool. So he knows that this is 16 by 16. Jesus Christ, my sound, I forgot my soundboard was active. Thanks, Nick. So he goes 16 by 16, but what happens when he clicks on that? Yeah, what I don't understand here is, okay, so when he looks at it that way, tile 26 should look like this, because he's breaking it down in a specific way. Can I like, okay, right click allows me to drag. So if I go larger, what changes here? So 16 left. Okay, this makes my tile taller. This makes my tile wider. So if I go to 16 here, okay, editing tile 26 should look like this. So everything should be broken out in a map of 0 to what? 624? Wonder what the purpose is behind that. We'll continue. We'll continue. Let me jot this down as a note, as something to research up in the long term. Gaming notes. Not a timestamp, but it's a gaming note. Tile editor. Sizing research. Is 5 inches really too small?
Now that we have the correct tile size, the only thing left to do here is assigning the collision to the tiles that need it.
Okay.
Let's start from the top left. In the case of this asset, we actually don't want to assign collision to the topmost grass layer, because we want the character to nicely stand on top of the grass and not float above it. So let's assign collision starting from the second row. We can simply click on Add Box to add a box collision here.
Add box to add a box collision here? So colliders, huh?
Because we want the character to nicely stand on top of the grass and not float above it. So let's assign collision starting from the second row.
Okay.
We can simply click on Add Box to add a box collision here.
Huh.
On the right side we could also make some adjustments, but the default is fine here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's click on the next tile and also add a box here.
Yeah, I have to do this manually, one for one?
It's quite hard for us to tell what we've already assigned collision to and what we still have left to do.
Right.
We can click on colliding tiles on the top left to show what already has collision.
Oh, sick.
And now let's just continue adding box collisions to this one platform.
There's no way you have to do this one for one. Are you kidding me? Damn, this guy fucking fast forwarded the whole thing. It's like he's a champ at this. All right. So, collision. Now, interesting. So, on his side, he adds collision to this entire stone platform here. And you know what? Let's follow the tutorial, but we'll change a couple things. Maybe we don't come back to change this. So I guess the idea or the purpose for colliders is exactly what it's named. There's got to be another way. Please tell me. No, you can't add a box to the 3 of them? No way. If there was a reason why people don't get into this, it's for this alone. Okay, so these colliders act as hitboxes, for lack of a better term, and the only reason why I can pull out a fighting game reference. Shit, this might be the thing that creates hitboxes, as a matter of fact. For a platformer's sake, this allows me to say, hey, which part of the 2D sprite is actually a wall, where if the character, whoever I'm moving, actually tries to run or jump into that, they aren't going to progress further. They are going to hit a block, and they cannot pass go. In that sense, what's all this for right, lit, unlit wireframe? Whoa. Okay, getting distracted. All right, let's follow the tutorial here. But I'm wondering, so he lights up the entire thing, but if I'm creating just a border, could I avoid adding colliders to the center? Or is that going to ruin something that I'm not aware of right now at this moment?
After we're done with that, we can have a look at all of the other things in the tile set. Some of these are just background elements that don't need collision, so we can just ignore them. Other things like this platform would also need collision, but we're not going to use it for this tutorial, so we're just going to ignore it.
Okay, so this box
we're only going to use this grass platform we already created, and I also want to use the bridge. So for the bridge, let's also quickly add some box collisions for the bottom row here.
Got it.
And that's it for tile set collision. The other 3 textures are only for decoration and don't need collision. However, we also have to convert them to a tile set in order to use them for a tile map. Select all 3 of them by holding Shift, Right click one of them, go to Sprite Actions, and create tile set.
Tile sets. So I gotta find out
For
why you
these,
need
we
to
don't
convert
have to do
these
anything else.
textures and tile sets.
Now
They're
let's
two
create a
different
tile
things.
map, which allows us to use these tile sets we created as a brush to draw a stage.
Okay.
Look for the T_tiles main _ tile set, right click it, and click on create tile map.
Okay.
I'll just call it TM_stage.
Tile set and tile map.
Double click to open it up. One thing I have to tell you about this tile map editor is that it's actually quite prone to crashing, and the crash mostly happens if you try to close the tile map window. So if possible,
Son of
just
a
try
bitch.
to always keep this window open and make sure to save frequently. With that out of the way, let's start making a very simple stage which our character can stand on. Here in the middle you can see our tile map area in which we can draw, however right now it's very small. On the right side I want to set the map width to 50
50 by 50.
and also set the map height to 50 to give us some room to
Nice.
work with.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Now on the left side we can just select the entire platform which we applied collision to use it as a brush. And then I want to place it somewhere near the bottom of the tile map, but
Oh,
not
this is
all the
so
way at
sick.
the bottom. Then I just want to place the bridge here.
Boom. Give me the bridge.
And place another platform next to it.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Now I overwrote a small part of the bridge, so I'm just gonna get the brush again and draw over this again. And now we have two platforms and a bridge with working collision, which our character will be able to use.
Okay.
I don't like having no background though, so I want to implement another layer. On the top right you can see a list of the tile layers, and we're currently on layer 1. Right click this and rename it to gameplay to make it very easy to understand what this is used for. Click on the plus icon to add a new layer next to it.
Wait, hold on. So you set this up in layers. Okay. For some reason mine is
Now I
eating away at
overwrote a
this thing.
small part of the bridge, so I'm just gonna get the brush again and draw over this again.
Oh, okay.
And now we have two platforms and a bridge with working collision, which our character will be able
Oh,
to
so you gotta be
use.
careful what overwrites what.
I
Got
don't
it.
like having no background
Got it,
though,
got it,
so
got it.
I want to implement another layer.
Okay.
On the top right you can see a list of the tile layers, and we're currently on layer 1.
It's like
Right click
Photoshop.
this and rename it to gameplay to make it very easy to understand what this is used for.
I can't double click. Okay.
Click
well,
on the
I can.
plus icon to add a new layer,
Gameplay.
right click and rename it to background. Now on the left,
There.
this array looking icon to select our active tile set.
Okay.
Select the T_sky_tile
Okay,
set.
that's what I was missing. Got it.
First, let's just select one of these neutral blue tiles, and I want to fill up the entire background with these.
Okay.
So instead of the paintbrush, I want to select the fill tool.
The fill tool.
And while we're on the background layer, just left click. Our platforms have
shit.
now disappeared,
Whoops.
and we need to click on the down
Gotta
arrow
move it
to
down.
rearrange the layer order.
yeah.
And now we have a
my
small
time in
stage
Photoshop
with
was
a
worth
background.
something.
Don't close the tile map window because, like I said before, there's a risk of
I'm about to
crashing
crash
Unreal,
this
but go
bitch.
back to the map. And now from the content drawer, we can just drag out this TM_stage tile map. Just to keep things organized, I want to reset the
Wait, hold on. I'm lost. Can I move this? Okay, I can. Oh, I can tabulate this. Dope. Okay. So what was he doing here? Making
select our
tile map?
active tile set. Select the T_sky_tile set.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we did all
First,
that.
let's just select one of these neutral blue tiles, and I want to fill up the entire background with these. So instead of the paintbrush, I want to select the fill tool. And while we're on the background layer, just left click. Our platforms have now disappeared, and we need to click on the down arrow to rearrange the layer order. And now we have a small stage with a background. Don't close the tile map window because, like I said before, there's a risk of crashing Unreal, but go back to the map. And now from the content drawer, we can just drag out this TM_stage tile map. Just to keep things cool. And while we're on the background layer, just left click.
Mm-hmm.
Our platforms have now disappeared, and we need to click on the down arrow to rearrange the layer order. And now we have a small stage with a background. Don't
Okay.
close the tile map window because, like I said before, there's a risk of crashing
So I wanna
Unreal,
go back
but
to
go
my
back
map.
to the map. And now
Okay.
from the content drawer, we can just drag out this TM_stage.
We can drag it out? Why can I drag it out? Because it's a tile map. Oh. Okay, hold on. This thing's looking a little jacked up, though. Got it. All right, so this might be where the tree farming with bazookas comes into play here. I already kind of see what's happening. So I'm gonna have to likely set up like a camera or something that forces it to look at it from just a horizontal perspective. Otherwise, well, you might be able to do some neat shit with this, right? If you want to break like fourth wall in an interesting kind of way. The ideas force like a unique perspective too for how you want to focus on this. That might give a headache to a couple people, but shit. There you go. Okay, I'm learning. Unreal pixel art game feels like cutting trees with a bazooka. Hey, you know what, Ross? At least it's happening. It's happening a lot faster than I thought it would. Right? I'm seeing, I'm seeing results a lot quicker than beforehand. As we go through, I might learn a little bit more about what that means. But if you want to provide context there, welcome back, buddy. By the way, we're learning Unreal Engine this time. I'm walking through a tutorial with Cobra Code. If that name sounds familiar, just trying to get the hang of this. I like it so far. Very, very simple to at least understand some of the basics that we want to track against, right? I just want to learn how to move things and make them stand on things today. That's the biggest goal, right? Before we change it to anything else at this point.
To background. Now on the left side, we can click on this.
Unreal is great. It has every boilerplate code baked in. Neat. Boilerplate. What do you mean by that? Like, it's not that I'm against custom coding, but I'm assuming you mean that it should be at least simple enough to say, hey, like point A to point. Okay, there you go. So you don't have to write anything. That's what I was thinking of. All right, that's actually good to know. So definitely when the time comes to get custom, you know that you've definitely at least had the chance to exhaust every other option that's out